Let's do introductions. Welcome to the Tokenizing Professional Sports panel. We have Andre Berto returning again. Andre Berto is a professional boxer and two-time former welterweight world champion. We also have Cash Campella. Cash is the CEO of the industry analyst firm RPA2AI Research and is currently ranked as the #1 global thought leader on artificial intelligence by Thinkers 360. We also have Dr. Oliver Kraus. Oliver is a founder, investor, and advisor with his own consulting business, Advantum Partners. We have Ron Mayorta. I think I pronounced that right. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Ron is the co-founder of Berlin-based Sports Tech X. He is a serial entrepreneur with over 12 years of experience as a founder and mentor to multiple startups after starting his career as a management consultant. And finally, we have Matt Bird, our moderator for today. Matt is president at Equities News and board member at Humanity 2.0. He has more than 22 years of experience in public relations, public affairs, marketing, news, and technology. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. The topic here is tokenizing fan engagement and financing of professional sports. We got a great panel today, and I'm honored to be asked to moderate it. So we've got a lot of topics to cover, and we've got about 45 minutes to do it. Let me lay the ground rules so everybody knows kind of how this is going to work. I'll work through the panel. Each of you will get a question, probably pertaining to your expertise and your vantage point. And after your comments, I'll wait 3 to 5 seconds, and if someone wants to add to that comment, it's encouraged. If not, we'll wait and we'll move on to the next question, and we'll kind of work through it. Idea is to have a really fluid conversation and kind of cover everything from front to back. And Oliver, being you're at the top of the heat here on the platform side, I think we're going to start with you and on the tokenization side. So we've seen a lot of blockchain applications and a lot of different use cases and concepts. I think tokenization of sports is interesting, especially with the advent of fantasy sports, fantasy football, and those sorts of things. Tokenization of teams is really the live action version of fantasy sports. It's pretty neat what you're doing. From Liquidity Team, can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges and some of the advents that you've gone through to get to where you're at now? You're at the go-to-market stage. Can you tell us a bit about how it's working on your side?
Yes, please. So first of all, sorry that apparently the camera doesn't work here. I think Edgardo, when you can try again. But anyway, I'll try to. It's not on our end. Okay. Sorry, it worked in the other panel. Anyway, so I'll try to, what we are doing at Liquidity Team is basically we provide a modular solution, B2B software as a service solution to build a fan engagement platform, the LT fan platform. And secondly, the LT Sports Invest platform, which connects investors and issuers of digital securities based on tokens. Yeah, we looked at the whole field of sports and tokenization in sports. Broke that down in 3 areas: the fan experience area, the financials area, and the commerce area. So and focus in there on specific fields. In the fan experience area, we have fan engagement with tokenization, the tokenization of governance solutions, and tokenization of fan identity. These are 3 use cases we see here. And fan engagement, what do I mean by this? That's a topic of how do you actually communicate with your fans, which opportunities do you offer them to engage with the club or with the favorite athlete And there we are talking about voting, we are talking about crowdsourcing of ideas and proposals, and also rewarding content production, for instance, by fans in this new digital age. And this is somewhat also linked to governance topics. For instance, we can with voting, obviously, you can enable fans to participate, to be closer to your club, to your athletes. Where, for instance, which players should be taken on, things like that. There are many things that we can think about. On the financial side, it's apparently about raising money for projects. When I take the club perspective, the club could think, for instance, about funding a new stadium, funding a health center, funding an internationalization strategy, taking on new team members, things like that. Apparently, we can also talk about payment systems in the stadium. The tokenization of personal seats, tokenized revenue distribution schemes, when we think of, for instance, the distribution of TV revenues, things like that, merchandising revenues, and so on. And then the commercial side, I see topics like digital collectibles, ticketing with tokens, tokenization of IP rights, licensing, and so on. Yeah.
It's interesting, you know, getting into tokenization, at least on the player side. You know, I gotta bring this then to Andre. Andre, you're a pro athlete, you know, turned hedge fund manager, world champion, Olympian. I'm gonna throw a jab at you. You didn't take enough punches in the boxing ring. You're now doing it in blockchain. So, so here's a question for you. So, you know, there was an athlete, I think, in New York that tokenized his contract, and it dialed up. At least it provided a little bit of dial up. What are your thoughts? I mean, as a pro athlete, and the idea of, you know, getting liquidity, creating a sense of liquidity out of your contract, you know, short term, long term, what have you. What's your thoughts on that?
No, I think it's awesome. I think you know, just us as athletes, you know, with the tokens and with a lot of other different systems now, you know, we're getting a chance to really, you know, feel like we have a little bit more of some type of, like, you know, I mean, like an ownership to everything that we have and everything that we represent and everything that we bring to the table. You know, it's been done a certain type of way for so long. You know, I think a lot of people and a lot of us athletes, we're really starting to see our values, and you know, with situations like this, we can really, I mean, just tap into something different and to lead the way when it comes to, you know, really putting your hands in it and to try to find more of like ownership and control when it comes to our situations.
You know, like I was talking about from an engagement side, I think one of the issues that has really come up regarding like blockchain and tokenization is adoption. Do you think players and athletes would become more proactive if they knew they had the option to tokenize their contracts, and so that their fans can actually participate with their success and, you know, of their contracts and upside?
Of course, and it makes shit a lot more liquid, right? So I mean, yeah, at the same, you know, and us as athletes, man, like I said, you know, we're in a space where we give so much to the game, you know, and we want to try to, I mean, get as much as we can to the game. Like, we fall in love with our sport. We fall in love with the fans that watch our sport. We fall in love with just the euphoria of just competing. So any way that we can be in a position to of course, you know, I mean, just make as much as we need to, And at the same time, we have our fans a little bit more engaged to us, you know, so they can have a little bit more of that intimate reaction with us, you know, as athletes, and seeing everything that we have to go through and knowing everything that we are maybe thinking, or situations that we're involved in, so they can continue to follow the journey. I mean, it's just going to be just amazing. And it's just going to continue building our fan bases up a little bit more. You know, you just don't want to, you know, see me just as a boxer, as a fighter. You want to really know who I am as well.
Yeah, you know what? And the connection between the two, I mean, from an adoption standpoint, I think they're symbiotic. It's getting players behind, their fans behind, and letting them participate with the excitement, the upside. I agree. You know, I want to direct this to Rowan on the sports tech X side. Listen, you're covering sports. You heard what Andre had to say. You know, what is your thoughts on this? Do you think that, like, with Oliver's model and the tokenization side and the monetization capabilities, do you think that if players and teams were to get together, they could provide the visibility needed to bring something like this to market?
I do, Matt. I do. I think there are a couple of really good use cases. I think the one that you talked about, the New York athlete Spencer Dinwiddie, who
Yes.
took his $34 million contract and tried to break it up and try to get fans involved. I mean, he's clearly ahead of the pack, and as always, when you're trying to break ice, you get a bit hurt. Didn't work out so well for him, but maybe that's just because he did it in 2020. A lot of things didn't work for a lot of people in 2020. So let's just park that point aside for now. But I think there are other use cases. There is one use case which we're talking about right now, where the athlete directly tokenizes his contract. Now think about another use case where a team can tokenize the athlete's contract, saying, hey, you want us to spend that big buck on signing that pro athlete? We need to raise a bit of funds from the fans. So, hey, why don't you guys all chip in? Here's a nice democratic platform with full transparency. You know exactly where your money is going, and it can feed into that player's contract, whether it's been paying his salary as it is in American sports, or in his transfer fee as it is in football. That's one immediate use case. We're seeing teams use tokens to raise money. A lot of elite European teams have used a couple of different applications to do that, from Barcelona to Juventus to AS Roma. And these are teams trying to create transparency in letting their fans know, hey, this is where your money is going. So I think that's a really good use case for the marriage of the two, of where an athlete can help tokenize themselves directly, but to get the team involved. That's in one part. To also talk about a little bit about what Oliver mentioned quickly, I think we talk about the entire landscape and we try to simplify it. That's my job. At Sports Tech X, my job is to make this really hazy landscape as simple as possible for an audience member. So we think of tokenization creating three main opportunities, and all of them are centered around the fan. Number one, we talked about fan engagement, basically earning something or using a token to spend it on something to get a benefit for yourself, to feel part of your team. That's basically get the fan more engaged. Number two, on ticketing, merchandising, collectibles, bringing transparency across that process. And the third big one, which is where we believe the real opportunity is what you touched on earlier, which is on the fantasy betting side. I think betting now is legalized in 18 states in the US. It'll be rolled out in more, certainly in the next couple of years. That is big money. And the more transparency and the more clarity you can bring in that ecosystem, the better for everyone.
All right, so then this gets down next to the technology, and I'm gonna pass this over to Cash. Cash, how do you prefer it?
Yeah, you can call me Cash.
This is not Cash. This is not we don't have a technology problem here. The technology exists. Right now this is an education curve.
Right. So I'm a technologist, but I'm also a finance guy. But more of a traditional finance guy. I have an MBA in finance. I have a CFA charter holder, so more traditional Wall Street. I work with VCs and PEs in doing deals and transactions. So I'll first address that bit. So when I look at, like I said, as a traditional finance guy, I'm still trying to wrap my heads around this concept of financing. That's really interesting to me. I think in the last panel, Andre said, he quoted Mike Tyson and said, like everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So 2020 really has been like that for a lot of sports leagues. So I'm sure that there are a lot of use cases, and Dr. Oliver's team has like sort of the most comprehensive things in terms of the use cases that are possible using this technology. So when I look at from a technology point of view, different use cases will be possible at different points in time because of they're all different mature and they're all probably not needed as much. We have other solutions to do the same thing without using tokens or blockchain. So if I were to pick and or prioritize, I would first go at what's the financing options possible. Particularly, I mean, it's a bloodbath out there if you look beyond the top teams, beyond the top leagues. So it's really an opportunity to push the needle on that. So there was this New York NBA player who's issued tokens. So as a finance guy, when I look at it, the cost of capital for that was like about 4.95%. So pioneering cost. So how do we reduce the friction of the transactions out there? So what can we do to make that? I also like Ron's point that there are a lot of use cases, but it's still early days. We have the use cases, but we don't have the playbook.
Well, I liked what Andre had to say when it came to bringing fans closer. I think that when it comes to tokenizing and sports and franchises, it really gets down to marketing. It gets down to communications and marketing and awareness. And if players, if the athletes themselves, I mean, I played college football, you know, you have, I mean, not the same following, but you know, you get the athletes to promote. You get your fan bases. If a team's tokenized, that means the players are going to ultimately end up being tokenized. And you have the same user adoption scenario that you've got going with fantasy sports, that you have live action playing. I mean, it's real money. Instead of me, you know, purchasing, you know, acquiring Peyton Manning or Brady in a fantasy league where I win a pot, I'm actually buying a piece of this contract. It's the same fundamental concept. And we see how fantasy is taken off. Getting to right here, right now, I mean, I have to go back what Andre said and say that I believe that it gets down to the players and getting, you know, marketing this and driving adoption. Okay. All right. Oliver.
Yeah.
What is your take on this so far? You've gotten a few franchises that you're lightly engaged with, from what I understand, and you've spoken to a few pro athletes, and you've got a Liquidity Team moving along. Tell us where you're at.
Well, let me maybe first of all explain a little bit where we came from. When we heard first in 2019 or so that in Germany it was possible to issue digital securities and to enter this finance arena through security token offerings, we thought, wow, that's really an opportunity where we can meet an immediate need of those sports clubs, especially the sports clubs, the football clubs, because they are in constant need of money for transfers, for instance, 100 million, 120 million or so to get on a new player. But we have seen it, we felt that it was quite difficult actually to close a deal, a real deal. And then in end of 2019, beginning of 2020, we managed to convince the second strongest club, Borussia Dortmund here in Germany, to enter in a partnership with us to develop their fan engagement platform, fan token app. So we sort of pivoted a bit to put this fan platform at the front end, yeah, and basically establishing first close relationship to the fans, and then having the option to convert fans into fan investors, yeah. This is probably a rather European or German topic, because in Germany, we see, especially in the football, or with the American terminology, in the soccer arena, a very strong fan centricity and grounding basically in the association. So many clubs are still organized or have an underlying association where there are members, like 200,000 members or so, that are very close to the club. They have lifetime access to the stadium and so on. And this is a sort of a DNA. And this DNA is very, very important to keep, yeah, and to, let's say, transfer or evolve into the digital space, where you have around 200 million fans for this club, for instance, globally, with about 50 million fans or so in Asia, and they cannot participate in a live event. Yeah. So how do you bring them closer to the club? This is a question and a topic we are addressing with the fan platform. And at the same time, we have to be very, let's say, careful not to destroy this DNA of the club. Yeah. And on the other side, you have all the topics you've been speaking about. We also see this, the fantasy sports, esports, all this, the collectible topics. So that's the commercialization of monetization of passion, if you like. Yeah. And we see that in the Anglo-Saxon world, the stakeholders, the clubs, the athletes, and so are much more open to enter this route. That would be my take.
Hey, you know, I got to tell you, I'm going to pass this to Andre. Andre, something that Oliver said was fan investors. I got to tell you, this just makes a lot of sense to me. And you know, coming into this, I mean, FanVest, it just makes a lot of sense to me. How does this become really possible at the professional level? Like, can a pro athlete say, no, I want to do this? Are there any barriers right now?
I mean, that's the thing about it right now. I think when it comes down to it, to be honest, it's all about maximizing your full potential right now as an athlete. Of course, you know, social media right now has done a very great job for it, especially in boxing, because of course, you have all your other sports, basketball, you know, football, whatever the case may be, you know, hockey, but these sports, like, they have unions. So everything is pretty much regulated to a point. You know what I mean? Boxing, a lot of people don't know, and they don't realize we don't have a union. So it very easily can, I mean, like it has been for many years, a lot of these fighters have been taken advantage of. I believe the max, I believe the max is like 33 and a third that a manager can, you know, they can take from a fighter. That's not including, you know, trainers still have to pay, you know, I mean, taxes, whatever the case may be. So with social media now, I've just now been starting to see it within the last 2 or 3 years that a few of these young fighters, they're able to build such a fan through social media on Instagram or Snapchat or the TikToks. And the way that they're really getting paid now are the eyes that are viewing it. You know, these promoters, these managers, they're starting to see that they're able to shift this group of followers that they have now toward their fights and able to promote themselves and market themselves now. You know, when in other situations they had to depend on these managers and promoters. So when you give an athlete in any sport that type of control and power, if they know how to use it, they're able to, I mean, the sky's the limit, especially if they're able to understand all of the nuances that they know that they can use that leverage in, and building that fan base and giving them more access to, you know, like whoever they are. It's, I mean, it only makes sense.
So this is fascinating. So you're saying they more motivation behind the athletes to promote the events, drive more visibility, because they have a direct monetary value to making sure that it makes total sense. Like, this makes total sense.
If I might add here, where we perceive, let's say, an opportunity here is that when we provide the technology platform to the athlete or to the club, to have the direct access to their fans on their own platform, we think we have an advantage we can provide to them compared to using the social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, as you mentioned, because you don't own the data. You don't have the direct access, basically. And this is what we provide with the fan ID, yeah, so that you actually directly have the full control of this channel, more or less. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. You definitely don't own any of that content that
yeah.
you.
This is an incredible conversation. Rowan, I gotta throw this over to you. I'm really liking this idea of fan-driven or influencer-driven, you know, athletes driving their own economies right now. Can something like this like gain momentum? Do you think like what would it take to really fire something like this up?
What does it take? So I think maybe Cash wants to jump in. I don't know.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the previous discussion. I think what's fascinating in what Oliver has said and Andre has said is, like, really there is skin in the game for the athletes, and the incentives are very, very clearly aligned. So it's all coming together beautifully.
Yeah, fair point. I think, and to take that skin in the game, to elevate it, Matt, to answer your question, I think it needs one high profile, somebody really, yeah. I mean, Andre knows, like when you get, I mean, it's a different ball game now. If suddenly you put, if LeBron has his own blockchain digital value, or if Patrick Mahomes comes out and says, hey, this is the company that I'm investing in, and this is, we've actually seen this in football, not done well, but we've seen elite footballers, the likes of Ronaldinho, Xavi in Spain, but not done right. I mean, they've just kind of thrown their name on, their face on it, but not really built it out and activated their really huge fan bases. So take it mainstream. I think that's what it'll take, number one. Number two, another quick point to jump on before, Andre, I think we all want to listen to you before we listen to me, but just to add to that, I think another big activation point is actually on the youth sports sides. I know a lot of this conversation is on professional sport, but now think of the 14-year-old kid who is trying to jump into, be found, be scouted by an elite team. Now that takes infrastructure, takes resources, takes money to get that kid, get that girl jumping over those hurdles or whatever else. Now, if she or he can find a clear, decentral, whatever, all the attributes that blockchain has, I don't have to get into those, but transparency-filled way of raising money for themselves. And then they have, everybody who's now an investor, fan investor, is also an evangelist and activator for them, and they're only going to build their brand as they grow. So on the professional side, it takes somebody to break through, but also the application in youth sports is tremendous.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, you're definitely right. You know, if it would break through like it needs to, just imagine the Odell Beckham, or, you know, and I'm not just talking about, great athletes, which we have a lot of, but I mean like athletes with influence, like Odell Beckham, like LeBron James, like an athlete that a lot of these young kids, they want to get next to, they want to be like, they want to dress like, they want to, you know what I mean?
Nike shoes.
Of course.
Like
And
Air Jordans, it's basically buying a piece of Jordan.
Jordans, and and you're definitely pushing, someone that's going to be able to just be able to bring that into our culture and push it and make it cool, and to make it cool, and it's tremendous at a point just like Robin said. We got a lot of kids right now, of course. Every other day, every other week, there's a new kid on Instagram becoming popular, or just everyone is finding just by posting these videos. But we don't have ownership to any of this content. So just imagine if you have this blockchain, profile, and you're able to build it out like you need to, and all of the content that you've been using to build this profile, or to add to this profile, to have your fans drive into it, and to have this access to this inner life of your favorite athlete, or whatever the case may be, that you own. You know how expensive that will be if the fact that you own, if LeBron owned all of the content that he put on Instagram, all of the TikTok videos that these kids are dancing to, and it's out of here.
If I might add,
Matt, sorry, just to add to that, I, by the way, also don't think we're too far from that point of this tipping point. And the reason I say that is that we've definitely seen a major rise over the last 2 years, certainly, of the athlete investor, where increasing number of athletes are directly investing their own money into startups. I use those two, the same examples that I gave. Patrick Mahomes, suddenly there was a device called HyperIce, which broke through. Everybody's talking about HyperIce because Patrick Mahomes invested in it. LeBron James has been a famous investor for a while. Kevin Durant has his own fund. Kobe, rest in peace, the Black Mamba, has his own fund. Serena Williams, Lance Armstrong, disgraced or not, but I mean, these are elite athletes. In Europe, there's a ton of it. So already you're seeing the shift of the athlete understanding their role and their equity value. And for that to just get directed towards blockchain, yeah, that's not much of a stretch at all.
Yeah, and I fully agree. And also what you mentioned, Ron, earlier with the young athletes and the opportunities, to give them the opportunities to develop, this takes a lot of money. And we can also, through these technologies, through these new opportunities, provide access to such an attractive asset class. And this has been so far pretty much restricted to very wealthy individuals, billionaires, who actually invest in a club. And that's more or less the same in Europe or in the States. Yeah? Who are the owners actually of those teams? And if you can democratize that, that's a huge advantage, I think, also for the acceptance throughout society. And adding to your point, Andre, with the ownership of the content, this opens also up an opportunity to give back to your fan base some of these revenues when your fans create content around the athletes, around the athletes' content, and add something there. They can be rewarded through tokens. This is a very powerful mechanism that we are actually just beginning to understand how this works.
Right. I mean, I agree that finding and funding the next generation of sports persons, that's a killer use case.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of need here. And I think we still have a lot of time. And I'm kind of, if you guys don't mind, we have all the right people here to have this conversation. How would we go about getting an athlete signed up today? And what would be the downside and the upside of that investment if we were to take, let's say, a LeBron James contract, or Andre, you were back in the ring and you had your contract. I mean, you can speak to a vantage point that none of us really know, but the technology and the capabilities here of delivering it, how would we bring this? How would we go about doing it?
I think, from an athlete's perspective, and just right now, just within our culture, you definitely have to probably preach a lot about ownership. I think ownership is a huge topic, right now, and just the fact of making whatever it is cool, making it cool, and letting people understand, the advantage of what you have, and letting the fans know, how they can, get probably a little bit more intimate into your world if they're fans, and very much just giving them something. You're able to give them something.
Is there any real downside if you, let's say you tokenize like a boxing match and the purses are set up, and let's say things become more dynamic and the social aspect gets in there, and you get ratings up and so dollars, but from what I understand, let's say about boxing as an example, there's a bit of downside risk. Risk mitigation. I mean, there's a minimum, and then there's the winning. I mean, people participating and tokenizing that opportunity. Like, is this viable?
I mean, I think it has to be structured the right way. I mean, for boxing, of course, it just depends on what type of level that you're on. I mean, I was able, of course, to start off at a very high level. You have minimums, but when we go into these big matches, say a big pay-per-view match, which I've been in a few, we negotiate the minimum, like the upfront money, what you're going to get, and then of course you're in the space to negotiate the pay-per-view buys that come, weeks after or a month after, negotiate that price as well. So it just depends, because at the end of the day, when it comes to the boxing, I mean, the only thing that matters are numbers. That's it. You're not in a situation, if you're on that type of level, and you're not in a situation where, and if you're able to get your contract straightened out the right way, you're not. Right. Yeah, you're not in a situation where you can fight and have millions of viewers and it not be noticed, and you not be able to be sat down and be, compensated, or be able to understand your contract. But especially if you're in a position that you know what you have, and you know the vehicle that you have, and understand your fan base that you have, and the numbers that you can bring to the table, and you show that, okay, this next fight, you've seen what happened. You see what these numbers look like. You guys made a lot of money, and I'm pushing this vehicle. So if you guys want me to continue fighting on this network, hey, Showtime is calling me as well. They seen the numbers, so let's talk. Let's make sense of this. If this makes sense, I'll be able to bring that vehicle of people to, say, HBO, and you guys understand my numbers. So, at that point, you can have a lot more leverage to negotiate, a lot more.
This just, like, let's get back to my first comment. This just makes sense to me, and I'm going to go from a news media guy to a news media guy. Rowan, this just makes sense. Is there any reason why news networks and publications and media would be going against something like this? I mean, if anything, this would fire up visibility. I mean, you come off of 2020 COVID-19, like the ratings are at all-time lows, across the board, and something like this actually could, fire up fan bases and get sports ratings and viewership up on networks and publications. Is there a downside to this?
Well, I mean, not to play devil's advocate, but I mean, there's always a chance of a Hindenburg kind of situation. No, I mean, nobody wants a train crash before your eyes. To be honest, I think the timing has a lot going for it. But the timing is important. A good example of this is, I think the Sacramento Kings have been doing blockchain-based payments and accepting and ticketing, I think, since it was 2014 or 15. And I don't think there's been that much adoption amongst the other NBA teams. They've been leaders in that front. But you've seen a movement over the last couple of years. Maybe there's more trust in the underlying technology. The market has to be educated. People have to be using it in other aspects of life. And so then they can say that, hey, I'll accept it here as well. A good example of it breaking mainstream this year actually was UEFA. UEFA was going to use a blockchain application to do their ticketing systems for Euro 2020, which is a big, big deal. Now, Euro 2020 itself didn't happen. That's another story, and I don't know whether they're going to use the same application for the tournament this year. But they did pilot it. They piloted it on the Nations League in 2019. They were comfortable with how they ran, and now they brought it to their main tournament. So to Andre's point, I think there has to be somebody who takes the punt and does it in a small way, in a controlled use case. I don't think you can like really go and like Floyd Mayweather's fight is now going to be with blockchain-based ticketing stuff. No, you can't raise the stakes that high. But there has to be somebody in between who kind of brings access to it, runs a successful pilot, as we do with all startups. There has to be a pilot. It has to run well. If it runs successfully, then you can take it to the next level. And we just need somebody to take the first punt on that.
The concept of it just makes sense. I mean, when I look at blockchain, I don't look at blockchain, and tokenizing sports as from the mechanics. I look at it as just it's the mechanism that allows us to do a thing, right? So it's the token. I can buy a piece of Brady in this season. I can buy a piece of his contract. And the fact it's written on blockchain, to me, it doesn't really make a difference. It's the fact that I can buy a piece of Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes and bet on this year's contract or what have you. It's really interesting, and this is I'm getting back to, maybe I'll rephrase this. What's interesting to me is, having a prolific athlete like that, high profile, yes, that helps. But having athletes that put up KPIs, I mean, real big milestones and put up numbers and knockouts and touchdowns, their contracts are fueled by those things. And you have these accelerators that kick in, number of wins, and their TDs, number of tackles, and all these, rebounds and 3-point shots and, playoff games. I imagine it only takes a couple players to start putting up some numbers to where the fans are starting to get a return on their investment for the scene to go rip wild.
Yeah.
Within the media.
Absolutely. I mean, it just needs, like we said, it just needs a couple of guys to take the lead. Andre, before you jump all over this and knock me out of here, I will add a couple of points that we haven't touched on before we sign off. One is the actual earning or creation of the token, and it's activity based, right? So it can be digital activity. Oliver was talking about what's happening on their apps. So I'm voting on something and I'm doing something. It can also be physical activity. We're seeing a lot of that in the fitness space, for example. Sweatcoin came and they did their whole thing. It is where it's at, but that's a very interesting use case. That's one. Esports is a very interesting use case where there's so much that is an inherently opaque industry. So bringing transparency into it through automated creation of whether it's tournament platforms, whether it's gaming platforms, whether it's in-game purchases, all of that stuff. If you bring transparency to all of those aspects, those are very good use cases. So there's one side of it, which is on the sports side, which is, hey, one big athlete will come in and take the lead. But as the technology becomes more pervasive in other aspects of our life, you'll find more adoption across the board by fans, by athletes, by fitness professionals, by esports guys, by the gamers, by all of it. Yeah, Andre, the ring is yours.
I know, just like you said, I think the most important, because like I said, of course, I'm out here, like I'm out in the streets. I know what's being talked about. I'm with all the celebrities and a lot of people when it comes to just fans in general. I think the education is going to be huge. Really, educate and inform these kids or even these athletes on what the full potential is. Of course, they have to be fearless to be one of the first ones to jump out, but they really have to be educated. And I think once they really get the education and understand it, they can continue the education by, just finding that top athlete that hops out there and of course performs but in the middle of a fight, or when it's leading up to playoffs, in between games, continue using these other social platforms to teach and to like continue to educate their followers that are on these other platforms on where they need to go on a lot more of the situation tokens. I think it's going to be a process, of course, but it has to have that fearless athlete that's going to continue to promote, continue to market. Marketing is everything. Continue to market and be diligent in pushing everybody, their fan base, towards that area and giving them something in that space that they can't find any place else when it comes to TikTok, Instagram, or whatever the case may be.
Okay. I think I'm going to throw this out there. If I might add here, it's a very, very good point, Andre. We have to provide a solution that is in some shape or form better, faster, or cheaper than what is out there. So we have to provide more features, something that it can have not in the traditional platforms. Being it something that we can give to the fans, to the athlete, or to the club. Yeah, that's, I think, the key thing. Beyond, it's not about blockchain and tokenization and all this. It's about providing a better product and service. And if you can do that, we will find adoption and drive adoption.
Yeah, like giving them something, and you want it to be cool. A lot of these kids, they want to know a real reason for moving away from the TikToks and the Instagrams, or being more focused on something else. Give them something that they can talk about with their friends and show their friends that they're not getting on these other platforms, and showing how engaged they are, personally with this athlete, and showing them how they can buy in on this contract, or how they know this and know that they can't get from these other outlets. And eventually, over time, it's going to continue making sense. It's going to continue being talked about and promoted. It's going to be cool, and the trickle effect comes. And then once they make that move, it's almost like, coming into the Holy Grail, like, oh man, oh wow. And you want to try to have that effect, and you want to be able for those followers to get something that they have never gotten from any place else, and feel like they have something that's connected to that athlete, or the entertainer that's special.
That's maybe I can add here, I'll give you some insights here from what we are doing currently in our closed beta version of this fan token app. We are building a network of content creators that actually build this content that nobody else can provide, for a specific club in that case, and we will see, let's say, in a few months or so, where we'll get with this. It's obviously in a beta phase, and maybe in 3-4 months, I could all tell you more how this works out, and how basically the acceptance is in the fan base, and how this product is actually gaining traction.
I think we haven't talked about it, but from an adoption point of view, one more tactic that can be used is roping in the government agencies or the sporting agencies, because as the technology is more widely adopted, there is more transparency. The data is available to everybody. So it's also the fight against doping and other things that happen, bad things that happen in the sport. So somebody who adopts a decentralized platform at a club level, at a sport level, will become the showcase or example for the regulators and for the agencies to show that.
I mean, I think it's a lot of different ways. I mean, you can look at this, of course. just making it a lot more, because it's already being done on social media to a point of just showing somewhat a little bit more transparency when it comes to your fans, and you see a lot of new endorsement dollars come, you see a lot of new brand deals come, or just looking at an athlete or an entertainer, and now you're able to look on your mobile device and you get a little closer to their lifestyle of of health or just education in general, because you're able to pick your phone up and be able to hear them speak and understand the things that they like or are intrigued about. So it's just the fact of really trying to elevate that and bring people a lot closer, because a lot of fans can continue to get a lot closer to their favorite athletes, especially if they're they have a lot of more things in common that they like as well, not just being that entertainer or that sports athlete. So like I said, this situation you can just level it up on so many different levels. So just the fact of really trying to put that game plan together and just have that first group that really goes out there and really pushes, and really makes it cool, and they'll all come.
It sounds like we need to build a little bit of trust, and once that trust is established, it's gonna, if there's a runway.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, guys, I think we're getting close to the tail end of this. I think we have time for a couple final comments. Does anybody want to throw anything out there? Any closing remarks?
Well, I am personally very happy that we have a world champion boxer here, because I had one picture, one picture here. That's actually my dad 60 years ago. So he was an amateur fighter. And when I told him that I will be with you on a panel today, he was very excited. Yeah. So thanks for that. Yeah, that's, I give it to you, Matt.
I appreciate everybody, on this panel. Thank Carl and everybody else that they got me involved in the panel, and hopefully I'll be seeing a lot of you guys soon. Hopefully, maybe we can invest in a lot of great things together, because I feel like I have a good knack for a lot of this stuff and what people want, and what people want to see and want to be part of. So appreciate it.
Well, Andre, I tell you, your contribution was huge. I really liked where this all went. I mean, I just can't help but think if this was fast forwarded 2 years, let's say where we're at right now, could you imagine if you were buying a piece of the I don't want to use it again, but Brady's contract, 9th draft pick, going to the Patriots, and all of a sudden he just goes crazy, and that contract, his renewal contracts, and that's really, I think, what's going to drive traction. We'll call it liquidity, right? So it's getting the cash out, but really at the end, it's about the fans making money, and there's opportunity for to make money, to reduce long-term risk on contract for the players, short-term upside for the fans, and it sounds like this is a real profitable and a tremendous market. Cash, do you want to say anything?
Say like float like a blockchain and sting like a token.
Can we keep the theme of boxing puns? And Andre, the next successful investment, I want to see a video of you on TikTok, like Eye of the Tiger style. You gotta go, gotta make that happen, man.
I want a signed picture of that one too.
Okay. Cool.
All right. Well, are we all good, Oliver? Do you have anything you want to add?
No, it's fine.
We're good. Great.
Fine. Thanks a lot from my side as well.
All right. Well, listen. Thanks for tuning in for tokenizing fan engagement and financing for professional sports. I'm Matt Bird, CEO of Comparable Worldwide, president of Equities News, and host of the Traders Network show. It's on ABC, NBC, Fox, and CBS. Look forward to seeing these archives out in syndication, hopefully down in the next week or so. Thanks so much for your time, everybody. It was a privilege to be part of this, and I feel like I learned something today. So I hope you all had a good time.
Thanks, guys. Good chatting.
Thanks. Bye.
Yes.